So yeah, if you're an Aces fan, this is not looking good. This is not looking good at all if you're a fan of the Los Angeles Lakers, because it is looking like Kelsey Plum is probably going to be gone from the Las Vegas Aces.
Did you see what just happened to the Las Vegas Aces? They went from champions to chaos in the blink of an eye, and it's all because of Kelsey Plum. Can you believe it? She's leaving the team that made her a star. Now you might be thinking, how could this happen to the mighty Aces? Well, buckle up, because we're about to break down exactly how this superstar's exit is sending shockwaves through the entire WNBA, and why the Aces might never recover. You're not going to believe what just happened. Kelsey Plum, the heart and soul of the Aces, is leaving the team for a couple of years. She's a 2-time WNBA champion, a 3-time consecutive All-Star, and All-Star Game MVP, which, remember that tiny little trophy? She's won a Commissioner's Cup. She's one of the most known players in women's basketball, and a lot of that has come from the Aces, because yes, she had the college hype, but with how poor she was to start her WNBA career, like that kind of would have gone very quickly. Can you believe it? It's like a bomb just went off in Las Vegas, and the shockwaves are still rippling through the WNBA. Let's rewind a bit. Remember when Plum was the unstoppable force behind the Aces championships? She was on top of the world, racking up all-star appearances and leading the team to victory. But now everything's changed. Plum reportedly turned down a contract extension, and it sent the Aces into a tailspin. It does seem like the most likely scenario is that Kelsey Plum would move on from the Aces. You mentioned that she did not sign an extension, and former general manager Natalie Williams told me before she and the Aces parted ways that Kelsey was offered an extension and declined. You might be thinking, why would she do this? Well, that's where things get really interesting. Sources say it's not just about basketball. Plum's apparently been going through a tough time personally, and she needs some space. It's like she's hit a crossroads in her life, and the Aces are caught in the middle. Now the team's in full-on panic mode. They're scrambling to find a way to keep their superstar. Can you imagine the front office right now? They're probably pacing back and forth, making frantic phone calls, trying to figure out how to salvage this situation. If you lose Kelsey Plum, you've got a big 2 and a super high IQ point guard who's still pretty good at their position, but then you've got Kia Stokes and Meg Gustafson as your next best players. It's like watching a high-stakes poker game, and the Aces just lost their ace. But here's where it gets even crazier. The relationship between Plum and the Aces, it's not looking good. There's tension in the air, and it's thick enough to cut with a knife. The team's desperate to keep her, but Plum seems to have one foot out the door already. But this is not a good look for the Aces. This is just not good for the Aces. It's really not. And look, obviously, it's not for basketball. Kelsey Plum, just like again with the Kelsey Mitchell situation with the Fever, if Kelsey Plum leaves the Aces, is not for basketball. You know what this reminds me of? It's like when your best friend suddenly tells you they're moving away. You're shocked, you're hurt, and you're wondering what you could have done differently. That's the Aces right now, trying to figure out where it all went wrong. And get this, Plum's departure isn't just about losing a player. It's like pulling out the foundation of a house. The whole team dynamic could shift. We're talking about a superstar here, someone who's been crucial to their success. Without her, the Aces might have to completely reinvent themselves. So you're probably thinking, okay, the Aces lost Plum, but they're still a great team, right? Well, hold on to your seats, because it's about to get real ugly for Las Vegas. Losing Plum isn't just about losing a player. It's like ripping out the heart of the team, and now that heart stopped beating, the Aces are in serious trouble. So if you're the Aces, this is like your last hope. If you want to try to run it back and maybe win 3 out of 4, your last hope, even to be a contender. I'm sorry, as good Aya Wilson's great, as good as Aya Wilson is not good enough to beat this version of Liberty. The Lynx by herself, let's break it down. Plum wasn't just any player. She was the engine that kept the Aces running at full speed. Without her, who's going to step up in those clutch moments? Who's going to sink those game-winning threes when the pressure's on? It's not just about the points she put up, it's about the leadership she brought to the court. And that's something you can't just replace overnight with the way the Aces played. She was very streaky as a scorer. She might have the odd 30-point game, and she might have a game where she'd score 3 points at halftime and end up with 23. That's just the type of player she was. Now you might be wondering, what about Chelsea Gray? Can't she pick up the slack? Well, here's where it gets really messy. Gray's trying to come back from an injury, but she's not the same player she used to be. Reports are saying her speed's taken a hit, and she's just not as effective as she was before. They were a big 4 that became a big 3 last year with Chelsea Gray's regression post-injury, and Chelsea Gray's not going to get healthier. Like, I've been watching her, and Unrivaled, she's still struggling to run. And the problem is like mechanically, Chelsea Gray has always kind of struggled to run ever since college. She's after getting another injury now, though, which is at any of the speed. She's obviously not someone to overly rely on speed. But like, you cannot argue to Chelsea Gray. What we saw last year was a top anything point guard. That's bad news for Aya Wilson, who's going to need all the help she can get. Speaking of Wilson, can you imagine the pressure she's under now with Plum gone and Gray struggling? Wilson's going to have to carry this team on her back. We're talking about a player who might need to put up MVP numbers just to keep the Aces afloat. But here's the kicker, even if Wilson goes off for 30 points a game, it might not be enough there's zero, like it maybe increases the chance that Aya Wilson wins and MVP Aya Wilson could have a freaking 30 a game, like she could go without Kelsey Plum with Chelsea Gray playing the whole season. She could have a 30. For all we know, the team around her is getting older, and they just don't have the depth to compete at the highest level anymore. You know what's really crazy? Some experts are saying that without Plum, the Aces' chances of winning a championship in 2025 practically dropped to 0. Can you believe that? It's like watching a dynasty crumble right before our eyes. 1 minute they're on top of the world, the next they're scrambling just to stay relevant. No. One, you can't argue that Aya Wilson is not at worst the fourth, like the third best player in the W, probably the best, so they're still going to be decent. But losing Kelsey Plum basically means, yeah, they've got no chance of doing anything next season. But wait, it gets even worse. The Aces are in such a tough spot that they're considering trading Plum for players who can't even tie her shoelaces. We're talking about swapping a superstar for bench players. It's like trying to replace a Ferrari with a bicycle. It just doesn't work. You won't believe how desperate the Aces are getting. They're scrambling like a cat on a hot tin roof. And their latest moves are so wild you'll think they've lost their minds. Remember when we said their championship dreams were turning into a nightmare? Well, now it's like they're trying to wake up by jumping out of the frying pan and into the fire. Let's break down the Aces' frantic search for a Plum replacement. First up, they're eyeing Kelsey. Thanks for watching and subscribe my channel.